Have you received threats on your life?
Oh, yes.
That what Malcolm X said when he got silenced by Elijah Muhammad was in fact true. America's chickens are coming home to roost. We took this country by terror away from the Sioux, the Apache, the Arawak, the Comanche, the Arapaho, the Navajo. Terrorism. We took Africans from their country to build our way of ease and kept them enslaved and living in fear. Terrorism. We bombed Grenada and killed innocent civilians, babies, non-military personnel. We bombed the black civilian community of Panama with stealth bombers and killed unarmed teenagers and toddlers, pregnant mothers and hard-working fathers. We bombed Gaddafi's home and killed his child. Blessed are they who bash your children's head against a rock. We bombed Iraq. We killed unarmed civilians trying to make a living. We bombed a plant in Sudan to pay back for the attack on our embassy. Killed hundreds of hard-working people, mothers and fathers who left home to go that day not knowing that they never get back home. We bombed Hiroshima. We bombed Nagasaki. And we nuked far more than the thousands in New York and the Pentagon. And we never batted an eye. Kids playing in the playground, mothers picking up children after school, civilians, not soldiers, people just trying to make it day by day. We have supported state terrorism against the Palestinians and black South Africans, and now we are indignant because the stuff we have done overseas is now brought right back into our own front yards. America's chickens are coming home to roost. Violence begets violence. Hatred begets hatred. And terrorism begets terrorism. A white ambassador said that, y'all, not a black militant.
Have you received threats on your life?
Oh, yes.
Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality, justice, anything. If you're a man, you take it. Power in defense of freedom is greater than power on behalf of tyranny and oppression. Because power, real power, comes from our conviction, which produces action, uncompromising action. And power doesn't back up in the face of a smile or in the face of a threat of some kind of non-violent, loving action. It's not the nature of power to back up in the face of anything but some more power. Be peaceful, be courteous, obey the law, respect everyone. But if a man puts his hand on you, send him to the cemetery.
Are you not, perhaps, afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already.
All 5 of Malcolm X's assassins came from the Masjid Ali Muslim Mosque, which was the Nation of Islam Mosque number 25. It's located at 257 South Orange Avenue. And this is according to Talmadge Hayer. Talmadge Hayer is the one Malcolm X assassin who was captured by the crowd. He was beaten, taken into custody by the police, tried and sentenced to 20 years, 20 to life in prison. Here's Talmadge Hayer here admitting to shooting Malcolm X.
At the trial, you pleaded guilty. You said that you were one of the persons involved in the assassination. This is correct.
Willie X. Bradley, also known as the Stick-Up Man, he's a bank robber. He's the one that shot Malcolm X with the shotgun blast, the first shot, which was the kill shot. And then Leon X. Davis and Talmadge Hayer got up and emptied their handguns into Malcolm's body. Wilbur McKinley is the one who yells out, "Get your hands out of my pocket," as a distraction for Willie Bradley, Talmadge Hayer, and Leon X. Davis to assassinate Malcolm X. Albert Benjamin Thomas was involved in the distraction too. So that's the 5 assassins. You have Albert Benjamin Thomas, Wilbur McKinley, both of them who were involved in the distraction. And then you had Willie X. Bradley, who was the one that went up and shot Malcolm X with a shotgun blast, which turned out to be the kill shot. And then you had Leon X. Davis and Talmadge Hayer, who went up and emptied their guns into Malcolm X. Talmadge Hayer is also known as Thomas Hagan, and he's also known as Mujahid Abdul Halim. So all of these guys actually have lots of different names, but ultimately the main killer, the man who murdered Malcolm X, William Bradley, was never arrested, nor tried, nor convicted, and William Bradley still walks around amongst us today in Newark, driving a Mercedes-Benz, living in a gated community. William Bradley was living in Newark, New Jersey in 2011 under the name al-Mustafa Shabazz. So William Bradley is now known as al-Mustafa Shabazz, and he was spotted in Newark in 2015. So here's a picture of William Bradley, aka Mustafa Shabazz. He's got a white beard, he's fat, he's out in the open, and he was also caught in a commercial, or he was in a commercial for Cory Booker, very much poignantly shaking hands with the police officer. And some folks think that the FBI or the New York police was involved in Malcolm X's murder. Maybe all these guys were involved in it. So it's, you know, you have a murderer. He killed Malcolm X, and he's still free.
In 1965, the assassins of Malcolm X all came out of Newark, New Jersey's Mosque number 25. They were Fruit of Islam members, Albert Benjamin Thomas, Leon Davis, Wilbur McKinley, William Bradley, and Thomas Hayer. Crime has plagued Newark, New Jersey for quite some time.
Making progress. We are making Newark safer and stronger. And together, Newark, we are taking back our city.
In the beginning of this commercial, a police officer can be seen shaking the hand of a man who appears to be a Muslim. There, the man dressed in brown with the white beard. The man that you see shaking the police officer's hand is today known as Mustafa Shabazz. In 1965, he was Nation of Islam member William Bradley.
You show me a capitalist, and I'll show you a bloodsucker.
Bradley was the assassin who fired the double-barrel sawed-off shotgun that took Malcolm X's life.
History is a people's memory, and without a memory, humankind is demoted to the lower animals.
The only thing that I regret in all of this is that two black groups have to fight and kill each other off. Elijah Muhammad could stop the whole thing tomorrow just by raising his hand. Really, he could. He could stop the whole thing by raising his hand. But he won't. He doesn't love black people. He doesn't even love his own followers. Proof of which they're killing each other. They killed one in the Bronx. They shot another one in the Bronx. They tried to get 6 of us Sunday morning. And the pattern has developed across the country. The man has gone insane. Absolutely out of his mind. Besides, you can't be 70 years old and surround yourself by a handful of 16, 17, 18-year-old girls and keep your right mind. You can't do it.
At 2:55 p.m., the MMI's security detail made its third and final change of assignments. A few minutes before 3 p.m., without advance warning, Malcolm walked briskly out onto the stage with a portfolio in his hand and sat down next to Benjamin 2X with Without further ado, I bring before you Minister Malcolm, Benjamin hastily announced. As the applause began, Benjamin dutifully turned from the speaker's platform and moved to sit down on the stage, but Malcolm stopped him from sitting down and, leaning over slightly, asked him to look out for Galamison's arrival. Since Galamison had canceled his appearance, the order made no sense, but Benjamin 2X obediently left the stage and Malcolm walked up to the podium. History proves that the white man is a devil. The enthusiastic applause lasted almost a full minute as Malcolm surveyed his admiring audience. To his immediate left, bodyguard Gene X. Roberts quietly left box 2 and walked swiftly to the rear of the ballroom, only a few feet from Reuben X. Francis. By doing so, whether by coincidence or design, he would escape being near the primary line of fire that ensued seconds later. Assalamu alaikum, Malcolm declared in Arabic, extending the traditional Muslim words of greeting. Wa alaikum salam, hundreds in the audience responded. Before he could utter another sentence, a disruption broke out in the front and center of the ballroom, approximately 6 or 7 rows from the stage. "Get your hands out of my pocket!" Wilbur McKinley exclaimed to another conspirator seated next to him. As both pretended to tussle, the pushing and shoving distracted the entire audience, including the MMI security team. From the rostrum, Malcolm shouted repeatedly, "Hold it! Hold it! Hold it! Hold it!" The principal rostrum guards that afternoon were Charles X. Blackwell and Robert 35X Smith. Unusual choices, as they did not usually served in this role and had little experience guarding Malcolm. William 64X George had guarded Malcolm at the rostrum many times, yet on this day he had been stationed outside. When the commotion broke out, Blackwell and Smith made a tactical blunder. They moved from their post and began walking toward the two bickering men. Gene Roberts, George Whitney, and several other security personnel approached the men from the rear. Malcolm was now completely alone and unguarded on stage. At that precise moment, an incendiary smoke bomb ignited at the extreme rear of the ballroom, instantly creating panic, screams, and confusion. It was only then that William Bradley, sitting in the front row, got to his feet and walked briskly toward the rostrum. When he was 15 feet away, he elevated his sawed-off shotgun from under his coat, took careful aim, and fired. The shotgun pellets ripped squarely into Malcolm's left side, cutting a 7-inch wide circle around his heart and left chest. This was the kill shot, the blow that executed Malcolm X. The other bullets caused terrible damage, but were not decisive. This single shotgun blast oddly failed to topple Malcolm. As Herman Ferguson recalled, there was a loud blast, a boom that filled the auditorium with the sound of a weapon going off. On cue, 2 men, Hayer in the first row with a .45 next to his stomach and Leon X. Davis sitting next to him, also holding a handgun, stood up, ran to the stage, and emptied their guns into Malcolm. Ferguson, still sitting only feet from the stage, took in everything that happened next. Malcolm straightened up momentarily. His hand came up and he stiffened. The shotgun blast had been fired at him by one of the assassins who fired from the crook of his elbow. He hit Malcolm point blank in his left chest. Then a fusillade of shots rang out. This kept up for several seconds. And I remember saying if they would just stop firing, maybe he could survive. And when they did, Malcolm toppled over backwards and the back of his head hit the floor with a crash. Ferguson was perhaps the only eyewitness who had not fallen to the floor to escape the line of fire. He continued his account. After so much noise, shooting, and so on, and the screaming of the people, there was a sudden silence. I could see all the chairs and the people lying on the floor. There were 3 men standing in the center aisle facing the door, and one of them appeared to have some sort of weapon in his hand. They were standing in a row, one behind the other, and they stood frozen in time and space for another few seconds, and then they took off running and hopping over chairs and people's bodies. Being an old farm boy myself, chickens coming home to roost never did make me sad. They've always made me glad. Several eyewitness accounts suggest that Bradley then pivoted to his left and may have fired a second blast above the heads of the audience, narrowly missing Ferguson. He ran down the right corridor of the ballroom and quickly ducked into the women's lavatory, located barely 60 feet from the stage. Discarding his shotgun, he and perhaps a second conspirator descended a narrow, seldom used flight of stairs leading down to the street, making an easy escape. The other two gunmen, Hayer and Leon X. Davis, inexplicably chose to run a virtual gauntlet. Leaping over chairs and people, attempted to escape through the ballroom's main entrance on West 166th Street, 180 feet away. Adding to the confusion, the homemade incendiary device composed of a bunch of matches and film stuffed into a sock was still smoking up the ballroom. The two shooters trying to escape through the main entrance hoped to conceal themselves within the large panicking audience, but even before they were halfway across the ballroom, Gene Roberts intercepted them. One assailant, probably Hayer, fired at him at point-blank range. The bullet tore through Roberts' coat, but did not hit him. Roberts grabbed a folding chair and hurled it at Hayer's legs, causing him to stumble and fall, after which Hayer tried to scramble up toward the now-packed exit. As he did so, Reuben X. Francis took aim and fired at him from 8 feet away, pulling off 3 shots. Hayer was struck just once in the left thigh in pain. He stumbled and continued running down the stairwell, where he was immediately surrounded by Malcolm's enraged followers and viciously beaten. In the confusion, Leon X. and the other conspirators managed to escape. Now, this Malcolm X was murdered in front of his wife and, well, I don't know if all 6 girls were there, but his children, in front of his wife and kids. So Betty would claim that she had seen her husband collapse on stage under the fire. Observers, however, saw her quickly gathering her terrified children, pushing them to the floor, shielded partially by a wooden bench in her own body. As the shooting continued, Betty screamed out, "They're killing my husband! They're killing my husband!" While the assassins fled the scene, the Shabazz children began to cry and to speak up. "Are they going to kill everyone?" one daughter asked. Betty could see people running up to the stage, overwhelmed by the terrible damage that Malcolm had sustained. Gene Roberts is the one that's giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Gene Roberts is also, he's an undercover. He's one of the authorities. And Malcolm actually talked about that. The Nation of Islam was thoroughly infiltrated by the police.
Gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody in sight. I would not wait. The police know the criminal operation of the black Muslim movement because they have thoroughly infiltrated it.
Of Negroes getting out of line. As long as they thought that Martin Luther King had things under control in Birmingham, Kennedy didn't see fit to send any troops down there. As long as the dogs were biting little black babies and black women and black children, Kennedy never thought of sending any troops into Birmingham. It was only after the Negroes showed that they were fed up.
White America is in the minority. So all of this comes out of Marable Manning's book, A Transcendent Life, Malcolm X, A Life of Reinvention. And Marable Manning was a professor, and he worked on this for about 20 years. This book is his magnum opus. He intended this to become the official narrative of what happened in Malcolm X's life. And the reason why he wrote this was because there's 3 missing chapters in this book. And this book is a tour de force. This book was published like almost immediately after Malcolm was assassinated. This book awakened me. This book is a badass book. And but there was 3 chapters that was missing, and it was sort of, I guess, not as comprehensive as this book. So Marable Manning wanted to, establish the official narrative of Malcolm X. This is where all this information that I'm getting came from. Now, the Nation of Islam had planned this murder to the hilt. Okay, 1 week prior to February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X's house was firebombed. Stumbling is not falling.
You mean he was going to kill you?
Oh, yes. One of them was, an attempt was made to get one of them to wire my car with an explosive. That one is with me right now. I wanted you to know that my house was bombed. It was bombed by the black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. Now, they had planned to do it from the front and the back so that I couldn't get out. They covered the front completely, the front door. Then they had come to the back, but instead of getting directly in the back of the house and throwing it this way, they stood at a 45-degree angle and tossed it at the window, so it glanced and went onto the ground. And the fire hit the window, and it woke up my second oldest baby. But the fire burned on the outside of the house. But had that one gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody in sight. I would not wait. And I say that because of this. The police know the criminal operation of the black Muslim movement because they have thoroughly infiltrated it.
Truth is on the side of the oppressed. You don't have to be a man to fight for freedom. All you have to do is to be an intelligent human being.
The Muslims claim that you bombed your own house.
That's what I said. The Muslims claim I bombed my house.
Well, because they say it can start from there.
Yeah. No, well, you can take what you want. The arson squad, the fire marshal, all of them are experts in this kind of thing. And if anybody can find where I bombed my house, they can put a rifle bullet through my head. It was my children and my own life and my wife's life that was at stake. In fact, let me tell you something, sir. I stood Sunday morning.
Also, that same day, 1 week prior to February 21st, 1965, they firebombed his house, and they also did a walkthrough through the Audubon Ballroom in Washington Heights, New York, which is where he is going to be assassinated. So this is 52 years ago. Malcolm X, a.k.a. Detroit Red, a.k.a. the Great Black Shining Prince, was assassinated in the Audubon Ballroom in Washington Heights, New York. So he was 39 years of age. He was prepared to address the Organization of Afro-American Unity in Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom. Now, Malcolm X was born May 19th, 1925, so he would have been 92 years old today. But instead, 52 years ago, when he was 39 years old, Malcolm X was assassinated because of Elijah Muhammad.
He preached the doom of the white man, as I have been preaching and still preaching. He preached that the white man was the devil. Then when he went out for himself, losing the guidance of Allah, the light of Allah, he went back then and fell on their side.
Now, Malcolm X was killed with a sawed-off J.C. Higgins shotgun by Willie Bradley, who was never arrested, never punished, never had any consequences whatsoever for his murder, for his assassination. The government also dropped the ball on this because why are all these loose ends just kind of dangling out here? More on that in a second. The entire assassination took about 15 seconds. There was, get your hands out of my pocket. Then there was a smoke bomb in the back, which was like a sock filled with matches and film. Just film. So I don't know if it was like camera film or movie film, but just film and matches and a sock. And they burnt it, and so there's smoke all, in the back. These two men are arguing. That's a distraction. While the people are being distracted, William Bradley steps up, shoots Malcolm X with a sawed-off J.C. Higgins shotgun, and then that's when the other two men, Leon X. Davis and Talmadge Hayer, a.k.a. Thomas Hagan, a.k.a. Mujahid Abdul Halim, got up and emptied their handguns into Malcolm. The kill shot was William Bradley's. One shotgun blast, and overall, Malcolm X sustained 21 gunshot wounds, including 10 buckshot wounds from that shotgun. So 10 of the 21 shots that was lodged in Malcolm X came from that one buckshot shotgun blast. The other 11 gunshot wounds would have came from Leon X. Davis's and Talmadge Hayer's emptying of their guns. So, currently, there's a little silver lining here. The Audubon Ballroom is now home to the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Education Center. One of Malcolm's biggest legacies was to get black men to assert themselves, to be more manly, since white racist totalitarian dictatorship, this segregated bullshit, was emasculating to black men. When black men would get lynched, for some reason, the white supremacists would want to cut off the black man's balls, and probably his dick too, take them home, keep them for a souvenir. In fact, you just had recently Nat Turner, his skull popped up. This movie was made, and apparently somebody had bought his skull as a kind of collectible, and they've been holding on to it for, 50, 80 years or so. But it's so good for the man who, finally said that they had the skull of Nat Turner. But what the hell is this about? It makes me think that when it comes to racism, there's hatred, there's ignorance, there's fear of the other. All that contributes to racism. But it seems like a lot of racism from white supremacists comes from white jealousy of black bodies. Why was Malcolm X killed? Because of Elijah Muhammad. There was a beef between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. Here's some backdrop. So John F. Kennedy was assassinated 1963. And then on December 1st, about a week after he had been assassinated, they asked Malcolm X what he thought about it.
Malcolm X, you were involved in a controversy some months ago with your leader. Is that over?
Well, I've been silent for the past 90 days because of some statements I made concerning the President of the United States, which were distorted.
They were distorted?
And yes.
What did you say, Malcolm?
Well, I said the same thing that everybody says, that his assassination was the result of the climate of hate. But only I said the chickens came home to roost, and which means the same thing.
Malcolm X is also right that the chickens were coming home to roost. That idea is just that essentially white America invited its own problems. So he was saying white America is sick, and then white America killed, its leader. So he was just saying that, white people had created their own problems. And, in a very general sense, he's correct on that. That's absolutely 100% correct. So if you were to believe the government that it was Lee Harvey Oswald who killed JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald is a white man. If you were to believe Oliver Stone and that it was the CIA, FBI, and all these federal agencies colluding together, well, that's also made up of white men. So Kennedy getting assassinated is white America's chickens coming home to roost. Now, I wanted to quickly break down Kennedy's legacy. JFK was only in office for 2 years, and he didn't accomplish much of anything at all. In fact, his mistakes were many, and his successes were few. Kennedy is the one who is responsible for putting ground troops into Vietnam. He's the one that put American servicemen, put a gun on them and said, go out and fight. So a strong argument can be made that he's the one that started America's involvement in the Vietnam War, whereas Truman had sent military aid and equipment and, money. He didn't send any Americans into battle. That was Kennedy who did that. He did that on January 12th, 1962. That's when the first combat operation of American troops in Vietnam begins, and it was ordered by Kennedy. So the Vietnam War is Kennedy's fault. So he, not only did he start America's overt military operations in the Vietnam War, he also tripled the American dollars in military aid sent. He also sent over 3,000 military advisors that quickly ended up being 16,000 to help train local defense troops. Now, again, it was Truman who started America's involvement in Vietnam. Harry Truman refused to recognize the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. Harry Truman sent $15 million to the French occupation of Vietnam in 1950. So it was Truman who started America's involvement in Vietnam, but not so much in America's involvement in the Vietnam War. He didn't put any Americans into battle. He never ordered any Americans to invade. So that was Kennedy. John F. Kennedy also helped to overthrow the South Vietnamese president Ngo Dinh Diem in 1963. So he helped to overthrow the Vietnamese leader. So you could say Truman started America's involvement in Vietnam, but he never sent ground troops. Kennedy did. He's the first one to do so. The Vietnam War is Kennedy's baby. He started the combat operation in 1962, and we'd stay in Vietnam until 1973. That's an 11 years long war. A mistake. Every single person that died in Vietnam died in vain. They died for no reason. We got nothing out of the Vietnam War. And even though it was 11 years, this was America's longest war up until the current 15-year global war for the lone superpower imperialistic domination of the entire globe that we're in right now.
Making mud houses in some sluice or some muddy pond.
Because that you think if they ever open their eyes and see the truth, that they would be fools to love us. Why should we love the devil? Right. Think over that.
So JFK, he got us into Vietnam. He's the one that started America's combat operations in Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was already going on, but it wasn't until JFK ordered American troops into Vietnam before our, involvement was impacting American lives. So that wasn't the only imperialistic thing that he did. JFK also helped to overthrow Iraq's military leader in the 1963 coup d'etat. After the coup, the Ba'ath Party got into power. Who's the Ba'ath Party? That's Saddam Hussein. So he was, wiped out the dictator, Iraq's military leader, in the 1963 coup d'etat, which is the same year he's going to get killed. And then that helped to pave the path for Saddam Hussein's iron-fisted grip on Iraq for decades. Che Guevara thanked John F. Kennedy for the Bay of Pigs fiasco. This is 1961, and it's totally Kennedy's fault. There were hundreds of deaths. 118 Americans lost their lives. 176 Cubans lost theirs. Thousands of injuries. There was 1,202 American troops who were captured. They had blew up 4 B-26 bombers, sunk 2 supply ships. American supply ships, American bombers were taken down. And when Kennedy invaded Cuba, that showed USSR and Cuba that American imperialism in Cuba was a very real threat. It was a very real threat that America may invade Cuba. The Bay of Pigs invasion almost triggered a nuclear war. So after the Bay of Pigs, Fidel Castro comes out as an overt communist. The Bay of Pigs invasion was an attempt to stop the Cuban Revolution, but instead, it actually helped to consolidate it. The Cuban Missile Crisis is also Kennedy's fault. That also almost triggered a nuclear Armageddon. Kennedy was slow on civil rights. He didn't pass much legislation of consequence. Perhaps the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is a really good thing that Kennedy started in the Apollo mission, getting a man on the moon. He started, that program. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. But it didn't happen until 1969, 6 years after he had been assassinated. So the pristine image of Camelot, the young, family man who spoke really well, the myth, more so than the legacy, has endured when it comes to JFK. So JFK wasn't that great, and Malcolm X was right. The chickens did come home to roost. I'm for truth no matter who tells it. I'm for justice no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being, first and foremost, and as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole. Malcolm X.
Very good. Which would you call your real home, Chicago or Phoenix now?
Well, either one is my real home.
Yeah.
Well, either one is my real home.
Yeah.
Well, either one is my real home.
Yeah.
Either one is my real home. And going contrary to the truth by telling other than the truth, it don't bring a person to no good end.
Became involved in any kind of sexual relationship with someone to whom they weren't married, that person would be brought before the Muslim community, humiliated, and then isolated for from 1 to 5 years. This was our law. In 1955, a young teenage sister left Detroit, went to Chicago.
Hold it for...
So Malcolm met with just what he preached.
You feel then possibly he was more interested in serving his own interests than a cause?
Well, I believe that he really wanted to be that which God had not made him.
Now, Lieutenant Phillips told me at this time that they had received information from an informant source that the black Muslim, somebody in the black Muslim organization, had vowed to kill Malcolm X, and that a part of this vow was concerned with killing him publicly. Why, I don't know.
So Barry Goldwater's famous quote is that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. Malcolm X, just like Barry Goldwater, also believed that extremism in the defense of liberty was a virtue too, and Malcolm X wasn't a moderate when it came to justice either. Extremism, Martin Luther King also said it didn't matter that if a person was an extremist or not. If you're an extremist for love, freedom, if you're an extremist for justice, if you're an extremist for good things, right? If someone's about to shoot your wife and you shoot him first, well, that's extreme, but who's going to argue with self-defense? So just being extreme doesn't mean anything, one way or another. If you're an extremist for genocide, okay, that's a bad thing. So Malcolm X, aka El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, was reprimanded in December 1963 by the unhonorable piece of shit Elijah Muhammad for his chickens coming home to roost comments about JFK's assassination. This severed an already tense relationship. He got 90 days suspension, couldn't talk to the media. So this was a beef, essentially, between a freedom fighter, on one hand, Malcolm X, and a disgusting, dirty, creepy old predator, Elijah Muhammad. So Malcolm X starts his own independent groups, and
Lieutenant Phillips didn't know at that time. Now, when we received this information, naturally we took precautions here in Chicago to safeguard his presence while he was here.
Do you feel possibly something that Malcolm brought on himself then?
Well, he did bring all of it on himself.
The media has the power to make the innocent look guilty and the guilty look innocent.
If he had stayed with us, following me, he would not have been dead today. He would have been a living man today. I believe Malcolm knew these things. But in fact about it, he being all fired for self.
He tries to go on his own merry way. Now, this wasn't the first time that Elijah and Malcolm X had irreconcilable differences. On April 27th, 1962, 7 black Muslims were shot by the LAPD, and Ronald Stokes, a Korean War veteran, was murdered, fatally shot after he had already surrendered to the police. Malcolm X was ready to put pressure on the police by working with civil rights groups, local black politicians, and religious groups, so the police would stop their slaughtering. The unhonorable piece of shit, Elijah Muhammad, said, "You don't go to war over a provocation." Now, this made Malcolm X think that Elijah Muhammad was a fake, who didn't truly care about his followers, like Ronald Stokes, who got murdered after he surrendered. But instead, Elijah just wanted to exploit his death for his own purposes. Malcolm X wanted justice right now, and Elijah just wanted to sit on his hands and pass around a second and third collection plate so he could pay off his underage concubines to keep his underage concubines silent.
And as those jealous leaders meet with some such kind of fate one day or another. And so he was all fired for going for himself, as he said.
Once Elijah and Malcolm had a falling out, then Malcolm went to the media.
Well, in 1954, a teenage sister left Detroit and became one of Mr. Muhammad's personal secretaries. And there in the Chicago office, she became pregnant after being there for a year. And she was brought before the Muslim community and humiliated and isolated. And a year later, another secretary, this time one from Lansing, Michigan, came to Chicago. She also became pregnant. She was brought before the community and humiliated and isolated. And because the other person was never brought forth during this court session, it was concluded by all of Mr. Muhammad's followers that it was a non-Muslim who was the other party.
Malcolm X reported about the hypocrisy of Elijah, how he was having sex with underage teenage secretaries, about how Elijah was fathering children all over the place. He had 12 baby mamas. This guy.
And be fitted, qualified to ask people to accept us as their equal or to accept us as a member of their society.
Communists, what do you think of this charge? Have you an opinion on this?
I don't know anything about communists. I never was one myself.
Malcolm is the victim of his own preaching. He preached for it, and so he becomes the victim of it.
You do not personally feel that anyone, any member of the Brotherhood of Islam committed this crime?
No, we don't do a thing like that.
Well, we grew so rapidly until that in 1957 or 58, the secretarial staff was expanded to, I think, 8 teenage sisters.
I begin with Allah and His protection, and I will end. If Allah pleases, it's okay with me.
Huh? I mean, what a stupid bitch. And look at that stupid bitch's stupid hat. The stupid way he talks, his lackadaisical demeanor, his stupid ugly face. Fuck this guy. He's a psycho. He's one of these, Elijah Muhammad has one of those skeevy demeanors where he's got that leather face, right? He got the leather face, and then he's got that really skeevy demeanor where I just wince at him the whole time he's talking.
Don't expect to be one, and therefore I can't say anything about another man's belief.
You know, I just scowl. He's a gross man. He's disgusting. I don't understand what he's saying. And also, it just seems ridiculous to me. This is the leader of the Black Muslim movement? This guy?
Because he's strange to us.
So you're using the resources of your own organization in New York to try and track down who did commit the crime then?
Well, we are trying to do that, not only in New York, in New Jersey, and here. Well, that's all. It's been like that in the past.
In 1959, 6 of them disappeared. 2 of them reappeared in Philadelphia about 2 or 3 months later, and they were all right. The other 4 reappeared in 1960. All 4 of them had babies. All 4 of them had become involved with someone and become pregnant and had these children. So it was, from what I now know, when the 4 of them got back to Chicago and began to compare notes, they found that the same man had told all of them the same story and had made all of them pregnant.
We are not permitted to do a thing like that by the Quran. A hypocrite is not to be killed.
Do you feel you were in any personal danger?
Nope.
Have you heard the reports that there were members of other groups moving toward Chicago in an attempt to hurt you?
Yes, sir.
What's your reaction to that, sir?
Well,
Death. If such thinkings are carried into practice, are forced into practice, I think...
Stop mumbling, Elijah. Speak up.
And I've been evil spoken of, but I keep on plugging.
To progress until it becomes a complete success among our people, and if they just be let alone. While a man is trying to do well, as the old saying goes, let well do.
Huh?
Since that the teachings that I'm giving to these people in the qualification of kindness and of not only body and soul, as they go to say. It only will mean the slaughter of each other. To live together and share together whatever is here. There's about 9 white men out of as a nation, and the fundamentals of the nation that they are involved with. Scripture which we have with us in Bible and Quran.
Montgomery, all through the South. Do you feel that these incidents accomplish anything?
I don't see where they have accomplished anything but the fights that they have.
Getting people hurt.
Getting people hurt and disgraced.
If you continue to kill, you have to continue to kill. If you continue to kill, you have to continue to kill. If you continue to kill, you have to continue to kill.
I mean, as much as I believe in freedom of religion and, you know, black power, totally down with black power. And I'm not even for sure if Elijah's black. He seems yellow. So Elijah Muhammad is representing the yellow leather race. I'm not for sure. So I don't know what kind of insecure sheep would follow this shepherd, this prophet, this Messiah. Elijah is not a messenger. This Elijah cunt is just a hustler with a Quran. And in general, what kind of man would be a sycophant? What kind of man would kiss anybody's ass? Even Muhammad Ali is just sitting there just clapping up a storm.
They preach they believe in Jesus. That's all words. If they had believed in Jesus, they would believe in Muhammad.
He's the greatest, and the greatest is bowing down to another man who never kicked anybody's ass whatsoever, just brainwashed the masses with his anti-white rhetoric.
That the same man was the father of all 4 of their children and had also been the father of the children brought forth by the 2 secretaries who preceded them. Mm-hmm. So this story was kept among these sisters until 1962. 2 of them rebelled against the person who was responsible and began to tell the story all over the city of Chicago. It caused many of the Muslims in the Chicago mosque to leave and go back out in the street. They knew it, and I knew nothing about it until 1963 when Mr. Muhammad's son...
So, in spite of Elijah preaching about having children out of wedlock being an Islamic crime, and then, once it was found out that the teenage secretaries that he impregnated had a child out of wedlock, they were hypocritically disgraced by Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam. I think it's like Fruit of Islam now, or Fruit of something. But the ones that Elijah Muhammad, the next prophet, mind you, right? The one that God's talking to, impregnating these teenage secretaries, and then watching as they get humiliated and shamed for having a child out of wedlock. And then the Nation of Islam would ban them from their cult for 5 years. They would isolate them, you know, for fathering a child out of wedlock. When it was Elijah, the #1 guy, the head honcho, who fucked those girls and got them pregnant. You know, what a fucking hypocrite. I could give a shit less about, you know, the whole out of wedlock bullshit. It's the hypocrisy. The absolute hypocrisy. He's a hypocrite. He allowed the teenage secretaries to be shamed and disgraced, knowing full well that they were carrying his child. And he told them all that they were technically his wives. So he was like, no, it's cool. You can fuck me. You're actually my wife. I'm going to keep this on the down low, and it's going to look like we're all laughing and humiliating you, but really, you're my one and only. You're my wife. But he only told that to them privately, not publicly. Publicly, he allowed them to be shamed and humiliated. When Malcolm X confronted Elijah about the illegitimate children, Elijah just shrugged it off and said that Islam's prophet Muhammad had 13 wives. Well, hell, the prophet had 13 wives. Must be okay for Elijah. And then he also pointed out the Bible's dated many wives too and fathered a bunch of kids. So Elijah's own prophet who he carries the name of, not only did he have 13 wives, he was also a pedophile. Many of Elijah's followers said that Malcolm was slandering Elijah, and the best case against slander is the truth, as German-American journalist John Peter Zinger taught New York in 1734. Not slander Elijah Muhammad, because what Malcolm X was saying to the media was the truth. He told the truth, just like he did about black and white relations in America, just like he did about the war in Vietnam, just like he did about manhood in general, police brutality, the double standards of the white supremacist, hypocritical society, the hypocrisy, the Democratic Party. You know, there's a shocker, that hasn't changed. And always fighting for the freedom for the oppressed, to liberate the oppressed. Malcolm X told the truth. He told the truth. It's not slander. And Elijah had 12 baby mamas. 12 baby mamas, and I'm not for sure what the ages of these underage secretaries were. There's no telling. So Elijah had 12 baby mamas. 12 baby mamas.
Two of the sisters had 2 children by the same man, and one of those 2 sisters was pregnant still, getting ready to have a 3rd child by the same man. So when it was known among the Chicago officials that I had a knowledge of this, they become very fearful of me. They became very antagonistic toward me, and they had to do something to diminish the authority that I had, for fear that if this became public knowledge, the followers would leave the Muslim movement and follow me. And it was at that time that they used the statement that I made against President Kennedy as a pretext to cut my authority, and some other things happened that finally produced the split, or forced the split. And when I made the split, the only reason that I didn't make this public knowledge was I knew the implications, and I felt that if the Muslims who were in the Nation of Islam knew it, that which enabled them to be so strongly religious and exercise moral discipline would be shattered, and it would cause all of them to go right back and start doing the things that they had been doing previously.
Who is the father of all of these various children whom you have enumerated?
The first one to tell me who the father was Wallace Muhammad, and he told me that the father was Elijah Muhammad himself. One of the sisters, he went to the home of one of the sisters, and when he walked in the door, she says, "I want to let you see something." And she showed him her child. She said, "Here's your brother, and your father is the father of this child." And then I questioned the sisters myself, because I was shook up. And they admitted to me that Elijah Muhammad was the father of their children. And I took it to him. And it was at that time he told me that he was Muhammad, the prophet, and that Muhammad had 9 wives. He also told me that he was David. He was the modern David, and that he was the modern Solomon, and that it was meant for him to fulfill today all of the things that they did back there.
And how many of these illegitimate children did he father with the sisters?
Well, he made 6 sisters pregnant. They all had children. 2 of those 6 had 2 children. One of those 2 is having a child right now. I am told that there is a 7th sister who is supposed to be in Mexico right now, and she's supposed to be having a child by him.
Have you ever just been in awe of somebody's bullshit? I mean, how in the world did this douchebag build the entire Nation of Islam empire? How did he build that empire? This douchebag?
As others, and that's banish all argument, dissatisfaction, disagreement. If he had stayed with us, following me, he would not have been dead today. He would have been a living man today. I believe Malcolm and evil thinkings of nations, and that they was cut off from their thought. I think that is very true.
Evelyn X. Williams was one of Elijah's sexual conquests, and she said that Elijah informed her that under the teaching of the Holy Quran, they weren't being adulterous because they were one of his many wives. So he's saying this again. Evelyn X., another Elijah's cum dumpster, filed a paternity suit against Elijah. And they also had to endure the harassment, and a bomb went off in their shared living quarters. Evelyn's first child was born in 1960, and she wanted more than $300 a month in child support. Elijah Muhammad snaps back saying, "You think I'm a fool or Santa Claus? Am I a fool or Santa Claus?" So that's how, he's paying these women, girls, off to the side to keep them quiet, paying for the child support. overall, 13 out of Elijah's 21 children were out of wedlock. 13 out of Elijah's 21 children were out of wedlock. So he did have 8 kids with one woman. But overall, he had 12 baby mamas. 12 baby mamas. 12 baby mamas. 12. Not this many, but this many, plus this one, and then this one. I mean, personally, out of wedlock don't mean shit to me. It's the hypocrisy that I can't stand. And then he's stealing the women, right? Only one man gets it all, and then all the rest, nothing. This is polygamy. This is like the Mormons. He wants too much. He wants too much. Many of his followers could have used a good wife. But instead, Elijah went ahead and tainted him all with his, disgusting old wrinkled balls. He's 65-something years old, Gross. He tainted them with his taint. So to the followers of Elijah Muhammad, gross. Ew. You guys are nasty. You guys are nasty. You can't see through his bullshit. Elijah Muhammad reminds me of some of the voodoo priests in Haiti. And the voodoo priests in Haiti, they would get, all their congregation around, and they're going to feed the Loa. They're going to feed all these different ghosts that are in the air. And the way that you got to feed the Loa is you got to sit there and take everybody's cigarettes and their, marijuana and whatever drugs they have, drink all their liquor, make out with all their women, just go through this little crazy spell. And everybody's just supposed to watch this this asshole just go, hog wild. And he's doing weird stuff, spitting things in a different way. And it's a show, so it's very, it could be entertaining. But it's clearly bullshit. He just wants to get drunk and make out with your women. Talking to ghosts, and why would you believe that? So the reason why I think Elijah Muhammad is guilty of giving the order to assassinate Malcolm X. If you just listen to what Malcolm X was saying, he was saying that as early as 1963, a member of the Seventh Temple confessed to him that he had received orders from the Nation of Islam to kill him. So for, 2 years prior to his assassination, there was already orders that were being, handed down. Malcolm X himself actually said that he would have wanted to have killed himself if he was one of the brainwashed members, if he would have been the same person he was a few years ago when he started speaking out about Elijah. So he knew, that he would have been wanting to kill the new Malcolm, the Great Awakening, after Malcolm received his Great Awakening, and he even once said that it didn't matter what religion that you were a part of. So he understood the climate within the Nation of Islam, and since Elijah was propelled to be this great man, this Messiah, this saint, he wasn't at all, but Malcolm X was breaking the spell of millions of deluded sycophants. And then overall, Elijah just has this slimy, skeevish creepiness feel to me. History proves that the white man is a devil.